It's noon in Kiev. You're watching Our Time. I'll tell you the main news at this hour. I'm Katerina Vishnevska. Hello. An 8-year-old child and 2 adults were injured in the Sumy region as a result of a Russian attack. The enemy struck a residential area. Private homes and outbuildings were damaged. The air raid alert in the region lasted almost 18.5 hours. In total, over the past day, Russian occupiers shelled 19 settlements in the region 35 times. And last night, Russia launched a combined strike on Ukraine. The Dnipropetrovsk and Poltava regions came under fire. Energy infrastructure facilities were damaged. Gas production has also been suspended in the Poltava region. While dealing with the aftermath of the shelling, rescuers came under a repeated missile strike. There were no casualties, but a fire truck was damaged. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, 4 private houses and a 5-story building were damaged. Windows were blown out there. In addition to attacked drones and missiles, the aggressor also attacked the regions in the east with drones and heavy artillery. And in Shostka, Sumy region, after a strike by Russian forces on an infrastructure facility, the power supply was lost. Nizhyn and the Chernihiv region is also completely without power. There are disruptions not only with electricity, but also with water, which will now be supplied according to a schedule. This was reported by the city mayor, Alexander Kadola. According to him, all critical infrastructure facilities, including the water utility and hospitals, are operating on alternative power sources. Water supply will be provided by generators according to a schedule. 8 points of invincibility have already been set up in the city. All educational institutions in the city are switching to remote learning.
Starting Monday, October 6th, all educational institutions in the city will switch to distance learning. All critical infrastructure facilities, including the water utility and our hospitals, are operating on alternative power sources. The water utility has published a water supply schedule. We have set up 8 locations where all city residents can charge their devices. If necessary, we will expand the network of points of invincibility.
And let me remind you that Russia continues to deliberately attack Ukraine's energy sector. The most difficult situation remains in Slavutych, as well as in the Chernihiv and Sumy regions. In the Konotop and Shostka districts, power supply has already been restored. In Slavutych, power has been restored to critical infrastructure facilities. Specialists are working to fully restore electricity to the city. In the Chernihiv region, repair crews will continue to restore power grids after the shelling. Last night, Russian forces attacked Ukraine with strike drones and various types of missiles. A total of more than 400 aerial targets were recorded. This was reported by the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The main direction of the strike was critical infrastructure facilities in the Kharkiv and Poltava regions. The Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, Odessa, and Kiev regions were also affected. According to preliminary data, air defense forces shot down or suppressed 303 Russian UAVs, 12 Iskander-K cruise missiles, as well as 5 Kh-59/69 guided air-launched missiles. Munich airport temporarily suspended operations after unidentified drones were spotted nearby. At first, the German Air Traffic Control Service restricted flights and then completely stopped them. As a result, 17 flights were cancelled and another 15 were redirected to other cities. 3,000 passengers had their trips disrupted. While waiting in the terminals, they were provided with folding beds, food, and drinks. A few days ago, an unidentified drone was spotted in the Norwegian city of Brønnøysund. Because of it, the airport's operations were also temporarily suspended. And on September 27th, Norwegian police tightened drone flight regulations around 4 airfields in Nordland after reports of possible drone sightings near the military airbase in Orland. A delegation from the National Security and Defense Council, as well as the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, visited the United States of America. This visit was a continuation of the agreements reached between the presidents of Ukraine and the USA. This was reported by NSDC Secretary Rustem Umerov. During the negotiations with representatives of the U.S. Department of Defense and members of Congress, the discussion focused on preparing an agreement for the purchase of Ukrainian drones and the implementation of joint defense projects, as well as the supply of American weapons under the Pearl Initiative. More details in our report.
The key objective of the negotiations with the U.S. is the implementation of the presidential initiative, the drone deal. The Ukrainian delegation held meetings with representatives of the Pentagon and the United States Congress to deepen cooperation and modernize drone platforms.
The main goal of the Ukrainian team's visit is technical negotiations to prepare for signing an agreement on the purchase of Ukrainian drones. They also focus separately on the PRO mechanism, financing the purchase of American weapons and ammunition using funds from European partners. Rustem Umerov, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, Facebook.
Washington and Kiev are discussing the supply of long-range weapon systems, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy reported.
We held negotiations with the United States. We are very grateful to President Trump for this dialogue. Last time, we had a very good meeting. It was a very productive dialogue. We discussed the issue of long-range missiles, of long-range weapons. We talked about it, so we'll see. It all depends on his decision.
A wall of drones should become Europe's shield against Russian provocations. The president of Ukraine called on all European countries to join this initiative. After all, if Russia decides to attack Poland with drones or violate the airspace of northern European countries, it would mean that something like this could happen anywhere. Europe needs rapid and effective response forces that know how to counter drones efficiently. And Ukraine is ready to help its partners in creating them.
Today, their strategy is simple: to divide Europe, stir up disputes, and prevent us from finding common ground. And I believe that we must act in exactly the opposite way from what Russia expects. We must act together, and we must act by using our strengths. First of all, our guys are already here in Denmark, and there are experienced Ukrainians who know how to detect and shoot down attack drones. And they have already started carrying out their mission.
Increasing military aid to Kiev and ramping up sanctions pressure on Moscow will be the key to Ukraine's victory. The French president is convinced. Emmanuel Macron called on allies to increase pressure on Russia's shadow fleet, the main tool the aggressor country uses to circumvent restrictions.
Between 30 and 40% of Russia's military spending is financed by the shadow fleet's revenues. That's more than 30 billion euros. That's why it's crucial to ramp up pressure on this shadow fleet, because obviously it will reduce Russia's ability to finance its military actions. That's why we're imposing a series of sanctions against them, that is, against the ships, insurance companies, ports, and so on. Now we have a clear way to increase pressure by coordinating a comprehensive approach to this shadow fleet.
The trade of Russian oil must be stopped. Volodymyr Zelenskyy called for the urgent adoption of the 19th package of EU sanctions against Moscow. Additional restrictions are needed against the captains and crews of the shadow fleet vessels, as well as the owners of these companies, according to the president of Ukraine. It is also necessary to consider the possibility of sanctions against Russian oil terminals and the rest of the fuel infrastructure of the aggressor country. Europe should support the call of the U.S. president and completely stop purchasing Russian oil. The head of state is convinced. It is short-sighted to go against Washington, and Hungary, which is not planning to stop importing Russian energy resources, needs to clearly realize this. Victoria Chistiakina for Freedom TV Channel.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.